What's up? It's Kaylee Cuoco. When it comes to travel, we all have a happy place. I just went to my happy place. I just went to Maui, and it was truly amazing. Priceline has always been about getting you to your happy place for a happy price with deals you really can't find anywhere else. Like up to 60% off select hotels in Costa Rica or 5-star hotels for 2-star prices in Cabo.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Tune in to Real Animals at 10:30 a.m. Eastern every Sunday during Waypoint TV's Mornings on the Flats. Presented by Abyss Battery. Power your pursuit. On Waypoint TV, the destination for outdoor entertainment.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the Western Hunting Hub podcast. Got some really great feedback on this last week's episode. Just an awesome story from Max, and it was good. I really enjoyed hearing about it. Just a simple story, but yet one that I was intrigued and was interested in listening to. Is really, really good. So if you got a interesting story and you want to come on the podcast, I would love to have that, especially if it's elk or bear or something September wise to add to the list of episodes playing while I'm gone in September. So I need to get some recorded. I got a few in the books to get done before I head out. Goals to have something every week up until then and during archery season, elk season. So should be something there. Appreciate you all sticking with me and enjoying the episodes. I still love doing this. We're going on year like 3.5 of this podcast with 166 episodes, somewhere in there. 67. This will be 68ish. I don't know, somewhere in there. But anyway, I posted on my Instagram a job posting. If you want to be my coworker at the South Dakota Game Fish and Parks, there is a naturalist position open. Naturalist really doesn't define what I do or what this person will do. It is hunting and fishing education, not teaching hunter education classes. Maybe. Actually, yeah, I'd love to have some help teaching some of those. But main thing, what I do is just hunter recruitment, retention, and reactivation of sportsmen, and take a lot of adults, a lot of kids, a lot of families, mostly families. I don't typically take a lot of kids out. It's our mission is to focus on families. So if you're interested in looking for a job in the outdoors or sharing the outdoors with people, there's a job available for the South Dakota Game Fish and Parks in Rapid City, South Dakota. Pretty average pay, below average maybe, and benefits are great, are really, really good. We have an amazing retirement set up here in South Dakota, so check that out. Should be a pretty solid applicant pool, so I'm looking forward to that. It's someone I'm going to be working with on a daily basis, and hopefully we get a good one for that, because it's a awesome job. I've had amazing jobs in my career, and this one tops it. It tops any of them. It's been great. So anyway, moving on. If you have enjoyed this episode or last episodes, go give me a rating. That'd be great. Positive rating and maybe a little comment on there. Appreciate that. We are well into, actually, we are way past any like new bow season. If you just got a new bow, you're way too late. We're past the tinkering season, most definitely past the 3D season. When I first started this episode on arrow setup, and it's really not arrow builds. I got the name of this episode as arrow builds. I'm changing that right now. This is just pre-hunt preparation. And I don't know what to name that. I'll come up with something a little bit better than that. But this is not necessarily just an arrow build. I'm not focused on the length of FOC, some of those details in there. Yes, the fletchings, but I am thinking of my best tool for hunting, not for 3D season, none of that. And so in previous years, that's what I've been focused on. I've been so focused on having, all right, what can this little field point do? How can I get that to hit within an inch to half an inch at every possible yard I can shoot at? How can I get that kind of accuracy? I want to be able to, I want to do well at 3D shoots, and I want to do well shooting in my backyard. that doesn't really matter anymore. That's not what's important in the fall. Shooting a good group with your field points is not that important later on. It's shooting a good group with your broadheads. So I have been putting a giant focus lately on broadheads. That is really what matters. If you've been just shooting field points, I think you're missing the boat here. You don't shoot animals with field points. Your bow might be dialed perfectly for your field points, and your broadheads match that. Good for you. Most people aren't, and mine aren't quite there. I don't think it's a tuning thing. Maybe it's a tuning thing. It would be some very finite tuning to get those matching. I know that's a thing that can be done, but man, is that a hard thing to do for the common person to try and get those broadheads to shoot just like your field points. It's tricky, especially when you're shooting fixed blade and a few other things. But if you think about it, those are not going to shoot the same. If you remember from your basics physics class in high school, you have this little teeny field point with very little wind resistance just flying through the air. When you add a broadhead, a big fixed one, if you add even a mechanical that has pretty streamlined profile to it, it doesn't matter. There is still some drag, there is some wind resistance, and maybe even a little spin added to that or taken away. So we really need to focus on how are those broadheads shooting. That's the big thing. So I want to share with you in this episode some things that I did to feel confident. And that's my big thing. I want to feel confident in my broadheads, just like when I'm going to a 3D shoot and it's Total Archery Challenge and I see that buck at 57 yards and I know exactly where that broadhead's going or where that field point is going. I want to have that same confidence with my broadheads. So this is what I did. Take it or leave it. Don't know if it's the best, but this is what I did. Thanks for listening. All right, to feel good about your shooting, I noticed some phases of confidence, and those phases kind of came. I guess if you can shoot year round, good for you. I'm working on that setup. I'm working on a heated garage, and I'm going to put my bag target in there, and I'll be able to shoot 5 yards, enough to work on form. I need to check height on that, make sure my bow doesn't hit the 8-foot ceiling, but that's a legitimate concern for me. So there is the majority of us who are not shooting year round. You Arizona guys down there, you probably shoot a little bit longer outside, but we certainly can't up here in South Dakota. We got to spread our shooting out into those warmer months or find ways to shoot inside, and it just gets harder. I've got access to an indoor range, but it just gets harder dealing with that. And it's also lack of motivation. Maybe the season's not here. Shame on you. Good for you. Whatever. You're moving on to other things. It's no big deal. But when you do pick up that bow, whether that's January or if it's April, I noticed there was a little change in the confidence. So first, what was I noticed? I kind of labeled these in phrases. The first phase was, "Oh, I'm out of shooting shape," and I noticed the shaking, the inability to hold on a point. Then after shooting a little while and getting steady, I realized I had some extreme confidence. Something just clicked. I was shooting and shooting. All of a sudden, just one day, boom, just nailing baseballs at 80 yards. Just beautiful little groups and just extreme confidence. It was good. And then you hit this phase of not sure what's happening here. Things are not matching that extreme confidence or those extreme results. Not sure what's happening. I get two little flyers off to the right, the left all the time. What's going on? And you start to question your setup. You start to question, and you are continually making adjustments to your bow, doing sight changes, rest changes, whatever that is, but always doing these random changes. It's just because you don't know what's happening, and it just effectively make it worse. Is what it feels like. And then reality sits. Next phase would be reality set, and it hits, and you settle in. Some of that comes back to some good confidence, and you settle into, okay, here's reality. I'm shooting good. I'm not overconfident, not underconfident. I'm shooting pretty good. And from there, it all depends on what happens next. Do you continue to practice? I noticed every week that I didn't shoot, went on vacation for a week, or I had one other thing happen. I got super busy and I wasn't able to do any shooting. So it was like a week at a time. Every one of those weeks I came back just garbage for shooting. So when you have a lapse due to practice, that's where some of that was happening. So right now I've been shooting every other day. And even if it is just a couple arrows, one end of arrows, I'm feeling like that's doing something. But getting just that little bit of practice is helping me just settle in. And right now I'm settled it. I've got my setup dialed. If you check my Instagram, I had a video up yesterday of some shooting. Don't worry about where those hitting, because you have no idea where I was aiming, but I feel great about where those things were hitting. I feel really good, and I am ready for the season. I need to just keep practicing, and I'm doing that with field points and broadheads every single day, shooting a little bit of both. And I think that's what's getting me the confidence that I need. So one of the things that I needed in this process was to have a purpose to my arrow build. Without having a purpose, I don't believe you'll end up with what you want. So I've decided I want one arrow for many species. I spent so many hours just developing what would be like a good deer arrow or bear arrow or whatever. It just needs to be one arrow. I don't have time to be messing around with these different setups. I've got a different bow that I could do, but I just want to put all the focus into one bow, one arrow, and get it set so I'm good. It's just like a rifle for me. I like to have one that I use for everything and I can feel pretty good about. So deer is going to be my primary focus. I'm sure I'll be shooting at more deer than anything else. Bear is a possibility. It depends on if what I'm going to carry and when, and situation of if we can get into bow range of one. There's a very small chance I'll need it for elk, just because more than one of us has to fill a tag before I go buy one. Maybe antelope. I really, really want to do some archery antelope this year. That would be way fun, but South Dakota's antelope are not doing so hot. Getting a little better. Last year was rough on them. The last 3 years have been rough on them, and I bet they gained some ground this year. But I feel like there's more archery antelope hunters out there than there are actually antelope. So hopefully I can get out, but it's also a time thing. I'll be in Colorado doing some archery elk with dad, so that's going to be a little trickier to get out to do any sort of archery antelope. So anyway, with this one arrow, I'm okay with a really heavy arrow. I have to have a heavy arrow. I have a 31 3/4 inch arrow. It's pretty much any arrow is full length. They're going to be a full length arrow. The ones that I've been shooting come stupid long, so I still have to cut. I do have to cut those. The Easton Axis long range, those got to be cut down just an inch or two. And so I like that. They're a 9.4 grains per inch. And my arrow ends up being about 480 grains is what I am shooting right now. So I don't want to be above 500. I don't want to be below 460. And the reason for that is I don't want to go too heavy, because I want to have somewhat of a flatter trajectory. I'm not probably getting that with this heavy an arrow, but I do want to have that sort of insurance for when you're shooting at an unknown range or a range that you're kind of field estimating. So you could be plus or minus 5 or 10 yards. So I really want to make sure that, or 20 for whatever reason. But if you got a story on that, let's hear that. Cause I got some good ones. But if you are heavy enough there, you're too heavy above 500, you're going to really have some drop in that arrow. Below that, it's not something I want to, below 460, 450. I don't really want to shoot elk with it. I'm sure it's fine, but I want to be nice and heavy so that arrow has some wallop as it hits that elk, and then able to go through. I want to have a entrance and an exit to put a clean 2 holes all the way through the animal if possible, so that now I can have more blood trail. I've heard some research on that, and I really like that idea. You won't pass. I'm a pass-through guy. I would love to have that. So another thought was I want to have something that can handle the wind. It's important, but realizing that I'm really only shooting the long distance at Total Archery Challenge. At no point am I really shooting past 60, 70. 80's got to be a bigger animal and a really good opportunity. I'd have to have things be a really good situation, very little wind or no wind, and things to be good in that situation. I guess I did shoot my deer at 70 last year, and it was just fine.
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and using their service, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. I was hesitant about having to get a new phone and a new phone number, but with Mint, you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone and your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and to get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That is mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
NFL Sunday Ticket is now on YouTube and YouTube TV, which means that it just got easier to be an NFL fan, even if you live far away. Like maybe you like the Bears, but you're hibernating in Panthers territory. But with NFL Sunday Ticket, your out-of-market team is never more than a short distance away. Specifically, the distance from you to your remote control. NFL Sunday Ticket, now on YouTube and YouTube TV. Go to youtube.com/presale to get $50 off.
Terms and embargoes apply. Offer ends 9/19. No refund. Subscription auto renews.
So anyway, another thing on that arrow selection, I have switched from arrow to arrow to arrow. I've gone with Victory. If you've been with me from the beginning, Victory was episode like 6, 7, 8. Had them on, and so I just stuck with them for a while. Awesome arrows. I used the VAP TKOs, and those arrows were tough as nails. They are awesome. I really, really liked them, and they were great. But then I had a couple of Victory Elites that I got. I got some cheaper ones one time because must have not wanted to spend the money on it, or $200 for a dozen. So I tried to figure out, okay, where can I save some money? Okay, got the Elites. And then the Elites, even though they're cheaper, shot a little better just out of my bow. And that's something important to know. Just because they shoot better out of my bow doesn't mean they're going to shoot better out of yours. And I've got a new bow since then, so it doesn't mean they're going to shoot any better out of that one. So anyway, there's still a 4mm arrow. That's kind of a big deal for me. And the wind resistance, I want 4mm arrows. I love that nice and small arrow. And I want something kind of tough. The next arrow I went with was some Easton Axis long ranges. And really where I've come down to owning any one of these particulars is either winning a dozen somewhere or getting a good discount on them. I think if you just spend some money on good arrows, it can't go wrong. And I don't think you can really go wrong. There's so many good arrows out there. But if you wanted to check straightness on them, cut from both ends on the arrows, Chris B put out an awesome video on bow only is what it was. Bow only put a really good video out on building like the perfect arrow. I thought it was really good. Made a lot of sense. And it was just kind of a fun little thing of taking a dozen and ending up with like 2 good ones. Probably going to be real expensive for you. But I know at my bow shop, you could probably go in and say, hey, give me 12 blanks. You could spin them on there and pick out the 4 that you really like. So, yeah, that's where I've ended up with my exact archery setup. So this year, Easton long range at 31 3/4 inch or so. These do have the insert outsert to them, and I haven't had any issues with them. Our bow shop said, forget those things. Maybe they're not the best. I don't know. Something up for debate on that, and I'm not stuck with them forever. And then, yeah, I just think that spending a little bit more money on a quality arrow is gonna give you that little bit of better fly, a little more consistency and some durability. But I'm digging these 4 millimeters. The next thing would be the broadhead choice. So I've gone with G5 Montex, a fixed blade. I've used those forever. I've messed around with various different rages and didn't really have any great success with them until they got better with their locking system, and watched some of the things that happen when you smoke a deer with those. Just the gaping holes and just some awesome stuff that happens when you hit something with those. And then I was thinking, I want these iron wills. I had just all these reviews and things on them. The penetration was the best. The flight was great. The sharpness, the durability, they were just winning everything. And so I was like, okay, I want that. I really want, but the price is just outrageous. So I'm just not doing those. So another one that is similar, and why I think that iron wheel does well, single bevel, cutting on contact, not having a point that has to punch through first and then end up losing some of that energy. I want something cutting as it goes in. And the ones I went through left a nice cut on my hand just 2 days ago is the Helix fixed blade. And these guys came out with a new blade this year. It's the FJ4. So was a 2 blade, and then they just added 2 little bleeders to it. So they called it the Helix FJ4. It's the old Stricklands, I believe. I think they had some company changes there, but single bevel, you're cutting right away on this thing, having 2 1/16 cutting diameter. So I'm pretty excited about that. That should be a pretty awesome field point. And then our bow shop owner uses them like crazy and has used them for everything. So I take his word on it. He also uses the Rage Tripans, but come to find out in some testing, that's not really what I'm after. So the challenge came when using these fixed blades. They need some steering. Adding enough steering without adding a lot of drag is definitely a challenge. And then the last thing here would be I'm giving you a variety of things: arrow, broadhead choice, purpose, arrow, broadhead, and fletching. Fletchings are the last thing on just kind of the breakdown of those things I was looking for. And I was using a 3-fletch AE Max. Flies great, easy. You seem to win a package of those at every shoot, or just you're giving them awesome little fletching. The fletch is easy. I like it. Been using them for a while. Wanted to look into something a little bit smaller. AE hybrids, 80 beat little guys. I 4-fletched them and I gave them as much helical as I could. And that's the best thing I found on all my fletching setups. I wanted to go as much helical as possible, but on a 4 millimeter arrow, it is really difficult to get a lot of helical. But if you think about it, if it is a smaller diameter arrow, it's going to take less helical to get that thing spinning than a 5 millimeter. That's just basic physics for you. So it'll spin easier. So if I only can add that little bit in there, I don't know if it's more or less. I don't know. I've never tested the rotation on them, but I bet you this 4 millimeter is going to spin spin pretty easily. So these AAE hybrids, itty bitty little guys, but that 4-fletch, they struggled with giving any kind of steering to anything too terrible big, but one heck of a field point arrow. That is my go-to right now for a field point arrow for target season. And then went to Silent Night. So Silent Night was a company, an episode I did a few months back, and like, okay, who are these guys? What do they got? Their wraps are awesome. I love their wraps. They come on and off. On as easy as anything, but off they come off nicely. Instead of some of the others, I've really struggled getting them off, but I don't have issues with them coming off when I don't want to. So the wraps are great. And then the Silent Night fletchings. They're wicked thin, really thin. I didn't notice anything different in sound. The company claims that it does, but I will tell you the durability is there on these things. When you bury an arrow and it gets all wavy, it will eventually go back to that the way it was. And we talked about that in one of those last episodes. But it does go back. But the shape of it, I 4-fletched their Silent Nights, which is probably a little much, but I wanted ridiculous amount of steering for the broadhead I was choosing. The other issue with these Silent Nights is they have the smallest little foot on them. They are a trick to fletch. They're not the easiest to fletch. They now have their own jig, and that probably would be the best option to go for fletching those. I have a Bitzenberger and I have a Boning 3-fletch jig that I like. But once you get into these little teeny footed things, it's tough. This doesn't feel like any of the other fletchings I got. It's really thin and really durable. So for durability, these babies win. For easy to fletch, they lose. But they did find the steering I needed for the big 2-blade. I messed around with 4-fletch. I messed around with 3-fletch. And that's a fun little discovery that I had in this little challenge here of deciding what arrow to go with. So after Total Archery Challenge, after 3D shoots and all that, it was time. I changed my focus. It's time to focus on broadheads and how they shoot. Again, I wanted a 1 arrow for all the species, and I needed to do a couple of things. I know my bow is tuned. I took it in, had them double check, shooting bullets right through paper. It's like, okay, bow is tuned. Things are looking good. I didn't want to have to worry about any of that fine tuning. The fine tuning of or sighting in with field ports, I didn't care about. That was something I knew if I sat for a while shooting like high and right or something for a little while, and I was fine with it. Didn't really care. I spend so much of my summer just sighting in, and I didn't want to do that this summer because you're sighting in, you're changing, you're doing all kinds of things. Shooting 3 or 4 or 5, 6 different arrow setups. So I wanted to just focus on shooting quality groups, shooting different distances, and messing around with my sight was a part of that too. I did some changes to my sight. So my bottom pin, I've got a HHA Tetramax 4. So the bottom pin is the slider. And then I've got other pins that are 20, 30, 40, 50. And that 50 pins my slider. Awesome sight. I love it. You only got 4 pins. And right now, 20, 30, 40. And then that bottom pin is 50. That dial is left at 50, or it's zeroed out at 50. And now I can just change it. And that's going to put me anything up to 100. So I'm liking that. Next thing after the tuning was got my arrow set up, my diameter, the inserts, all that. The one thing I don't mess around with in my arrow setup is FOC, front of center, all that weight. I know I'm sitting roughly at 15, 16%, which I hear is just fine. The only thing I probably would like to do in the future is look into 125 grain field points. Or I don't know. That's probably cheaper, honestly, changing field points than adding whole new inserts, and that makes all my arrows worthless then, because I can't just cut them off and put something new on. So I'm going to need to just look into 125 grain field points. Sit one. I got an iron will sitting here. It's the only iron will I have. Buddy gave me to mess around with. I haven't shot it yet, and I don't know if I want to yet. I think next year I'll mess around with it just to give it a little bit more front of center weight. And who knows, maybe that just gives me amazing accuracy and gets you even closer to what your field points are shooting. So something to mess around with. So in the arrow fletching setup, my process was to ditch the old system. I was ditching it. So I tried a 3 fletch and I tried a 4 fletch. And I wanted to just work on the fletchings, period. I did not notice any difference really when you have just that, your fletchings and a field point on 20 to 50 yards. I did not notice any difference. That's because the steering is not needed as much. It's just a field point on the front. So I needed to put on some broadheads, and I would test the precision of that arrow flight with a broadhead on 20 to 50 yards over and over and over again, shooting one at 20, then shooting it at 50, shooting at 20, shooting at 50, trying to save the time instead of going 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. I wanted to see what close range was, and I wanted to see what further range was. And messing around with the Rage Tripans, the Helix FJ4s, shooting a 365 target. I've been digging that target. It's pretty nice for shooting broadheads. And also, little tip, when to save your broadhead targets, follow the path your arrow went out. Just don't yank your arrow out, but pull it out along the rotational path, because as that arrow goes in, if you got a good broadhead, it rotates. And I noticed like crazy with this single bevel broadhead of the Helix FJ4s, it rotated like crazy, way more than the Rage Tripans. And what I noticed last week as I was shooting, I was making my last decisions on the broadheads, is the Rage Tripans would hit, and I just hear that loud click of it opening up as it hit, and that arrow would almost be at an angle. So it just did something funky, like maybe opened unevenly. And even on that soft foam target, I started getting some bends in the blades, and it started to mess with that arrow flight. That alone right there said, you are out. I'm done with them. I still think these are a really great broadhead. I think they could be, if you had a fresh one all the time, but this is not a broadhead, I don't think, to be using over and over again, or even trying to you can't really resharpen them. Maybe you can, but I'm not going to try and mess around with that. So I did notice that on the FJ4s, those babies are sharp and they stay sharp. And you notice that with those higher quality fixed blades, those things stay sharp way more than the Montex that I'd been shooting. I'm done with those. I got a bunch of those still left over, and I'm not going to be using them because they just do not hold their edge like any of these others. So back to this process. I would shoot 20 to 50 with a different setup each time. If you ever done low development with a rifle, it's the same stinking thing. Go fletch up 2 arrows, because you can always have one that's going to be a little goofy. And that's the whole point of putting wraps on, is fletchings aren't too expensive. And these wraps are a little more, they're a little rough, but they're not too bad. The Silent Night ones are cheap. That's the good thing about it. I didn't spend too terrible much on them. So get some wraps, try your 3 fletch with your broadhead, and I tried it at 20, 50, and 60, and saw how that compared. I had the AA hybrids. That's where I found out those little teeny fletchings did not have enough steering for that big broadhead of the fixed blade. And maybe somebody would be like, duh, you can't just take those little things on a big fixed blade. That doesn't work. So that's what I found out. I found it out through trial and error, and that's where I'm sure those people found that out. So you can put your itty bitty little fletchings on arrows if you use mechanicals, or a Slick Tricks, I think, is an awesome little broadhead. That would be something I would consider, something that flies really, really well. I use those for work, and I don't have to worry about too much resighting in for the broadheads. So the reason why also I went with a 4-fletch instead of a 3-fletch is I shot it. I shot the 4 and I shot the 3. And every time that gave me, I was shooting to the left. I remember shooting to the left with the 4s and the 3s and the Silent Nights. And it ended up being like a foot to the left at whatever distance it was with the 3-blade. And it was 6 inches to the left with the 4-fletch. So I thought, okay, more steering. It's coming in there a little tighter each time. So that's what I went with. 4-fletch, Silent Night, lots of steering, and a broadhead that is going to slice and dice and twist as it goes in. That's the big thing that I think as you corkscrew on your way in. So a single bevel broadhead is pretty important to me now. And so I'm going to pull this iron will out of here. That, man, when you get these things that come in a fancy little box and it's just a sweet little, no, this one's a double bevel. Dang, that's going to mess up my testing for next year. God, that thing is razor sharp. Sweet little broadhead, though. Love to mess around with shooting one of those. But these FJ4s, after shooting it over and over and over again, which it should have been dull, but wasn't, still cut me. And I think it's going to be a killer. So anyway, to wrap this up, big thing is doing some trial and error with your shooting. If you see something you like, don't just fletch a dozen arrows into that thing or take someone's recommendation for what that is. Spend the money and get it. If I had to start all over again on this, I'd buy 2 dozen arrows. I would then buy you could mess around with the weights. I've already done that in the past with weights in the front as far as the insert. You could maybe simulate that or figure that out, which weight to go by grabbing an insert, finding what that FOC is before you even buy them, and go from there. But the minus the weight portion of that front end, that could be adjusted with a broadhead. Besides that, get a dozen arrows, a dozen or 2 dozen brand new field points. Don't just use your same ones over and over again, and then weigh those out. The inserts are going to be different. The field points are going to be different, and you could match those to get things very even across all your arrows. That's in that bow only YouTube video. You ought to go check that out. And then the next thing I would do is get a few of each of the fletchings that you are wanting to mess around with. That's what I did. So I took a couple of those, fletched them at 3, fletched them at 4, shot them to see what the results were. And again, I did not care where my field points were going. I wanted to see how it was steering a broadhead. The things I did not test were how did broadheads cut and penetrate and all that sort of thing. There's YouTube videos for that. It's going to cut and do whatever. I can watch somebody in some gel foam or shoot through a shoulder blade or something like that. I don't really need to do any of that. Don't want to do any of that. I just want to see how they fly in my bow. So the things that I can't YouTube is what flies best out of my bow. So what I needed to build some various things to get to that point. So that's what I did. And I'll wrap this up just with saying that you spend some money doing this, get a few different fletchings, try some things out. Oh, also get brand new nocks. Don't grab old nocks. Those, you want to have things to be equally pinching onto your string so that those are flying correctly. But hope you guys find some success this fall. And it's probably too late to be messing around with your bows and arrow setup. Meaning to do this a long time ago, and probably not as detailed as that process. I could not just lay out my process of how I trial and errored through all these arrows, because it took me, I've been doing it for the last 3 months and messing around with it, trying to find the right setup. And all it was time in my yard, shooting and shooting and shooting at various distances, seeing what was accurate, and then sighting in for my broadheads. And right now, I know exactly where my broadheads hit, and I feel really good about it. Oh, one more big tip. After finding which ones shoot really well, I have now, they're numbered, obviously, arrows 1 and 2 or whatever they are. Arrow number 1 shoots awesome. Maybe it's because I sighted into that one arrow. And arrow 2 shot really great. I threw out one arrow, but I am attaching the broadheads to that arrow, and I am leaving it alone. The next time I pull that arrow out to shoot is to be shooting it with an animal. So that arrow is going to be left alone. If I want to practice, I'm going to practice with some other arrows and other setups. So anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. And once again, give it a good rating if you would. Or also, if you need some discount codes on some things, Ridge Patrol, Clint 10, also Wilderness Athlete, promo code Hunting Hub. And if you haven't checked out the Outdoor Call Radio app, go check that out to get some different hunting content every day, all day.
To the land, but it ain't my ground. This is God's country.